Welcome, and thanks for joining us again. I'm Rich Brady, Chief Executive Officer at the American Society of Military Comptrollers, and your host on The Business of Defense, sponsored by ASMC on Federal News Network. My guest today is Michael Munson, President and Chief Customer Experience Officer at Definitive Logic. Definitive Logic is a digital transformation consultancy with over 20 years of experience supporting defense, homeland security, other government agencies, and commercial clients. Definitive Logic competes by providing objective, vendor-neutral guidance at the edge of the technological spectrum and recently acquired digital mobilizations to scale innovations at the enterprise level. Mike, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Rich. It's great to be here. Thanks to you and ASMC for hosting us today.
Great. Thank you very much. So today, Definitive Logic has over 250 employees working over 50 projects out there. But let's talk about the beginning,
Sure.
kind of the start. What's the genesis of Definitive Logic?
Well, Paul Burke, we're here, our CFO or our CEO and co-founder. He would say that he started the company along with Jeremy Fisher, his partner, to really be the antithesis to the normal Beltway bandit contractor, to do things differently, to be really a disruptor in the force, to support our customers, transform our customers, whether it's organizational change or digital, technology changes. So, and over the last 20 years, we're getting there. So.
Did it start out as a pure play IT company? Or?
Absolutely. Yeah, we are typically, we'll do some strategic advisory services, staff augmentation, if you will, but we are really about harnessing technology to transform organizations to save them time, money, and manpower.
Now, I always think it's interesting how companies evolve over time from kind of where they started to where they are today. Can you talk a little bit about that evolutionary process? Was it directional and that you were deciding which areas of growth you want to go into, or did you just respond to opportunities as they presented themselves?
A little bit of both, as I'm sure most defense companies and federal contractors, you start out with a vision, a focus where you want to make a difference, which for Paul and his initial team 20 years ago, was in the planning, programming, budget, and execution space, the FM space, if you will, very closely tied with ASMC as a corporate partner there. And then as we started to make inroads and start to have some outcomes there, we started to look at where else can we solve the big hairy problems that are out there, and we started to look towards human capital, asset management, logistics, supply chain management, bringing low-code applications, COTS applications, cloud applications to bear for the federal government.
And at some point in time, venture capital came into the picture. I believe that you do have some VC funding.
About 2 years ago, and that was a chance for a reorg, and we were able to bring them on board, and with their support and their expertise guiding us, we were still a small business, and we were able to make an acquisition this past spring of DMI, as you mentioned, that really put us on the fast track to doing some really cool stuff across the federal government.
So the value that the venture capital brought to you was your ability to grow and expand, it sounds like. But sometimes they say that when you take venture capital funding or private equity funding, it can have an effect on the culture of the organization. Did you see some cultural changes as well with that?
Actually, no. There's a really cool thing about our partner, which is Blue Delta Capital Partners. They always take a minority stake. And their direction to Paul Burke and to the other leadership team was, we are there to support you. We've been there and done this in your shoes before. We want to mentor you and guide you. But at the end of the day, it's Paul Burke, Mike Munson, it's your decision. How to run the company, where to move the chess pieces on the board. So they've been great.
Yeah, that's great. That gives you a lot more freedom of action to respond to the marketplace. So when you're meeting with clients today, prospective clients, what's your 30-second pitch?
Well, I think you mentioned it. We're here to digitally transform our organizations in the federal government and DOD, even the private sector. We're doing some even at state and local. Right now, we're at this intersection of really cool technology, whether it's harnessing the power of the cloud, whether it's AWS or Azure, cloud native applications, COTS applications. What we really try to do is bring in what are those Fortune 500 companies using today for those 5 functional domains that I mentioned. financial management, human capital, asset management, real property management, logistics and supply chain. What are they using today for their analytics platforms? How are they driving decision making using data? And we take those applications, whether it's BI tools, full stack technology. We do some custom .NET that we can develop. If there's nothing out there, we have some really smart developers that would love to get after that kind of development. So
Great.
A little more than a 30-second elevator pitch, but as you can tell, I'm pretty passionate about what we do.
Absolutely. So I always think it's interesting, when you're talking to people in the field, how you describe what you do and how you try to sell them on your business. I also think it's interesting, looking at it from the perspective, let's say you're sitting around the Thanksgiving table and you're talking to the family. How would you describe to family members what you do at Definitive Logic?
Well, most of my family members are taxpayers, so I say what we do is we try to be different. We're not there to grow our team and produce ROI for the company and for our board of directors. We're there to produce ROI for our customers, our federal customers primarily. So at the end of the day, if the applications we're developing and fielding, sustaining are not driving those outcomes and that ROI, saving them time, money, and manpower, then we failed. And so right now, my job as a Chief Customer Experience Officer, I drive our PMs to what is that business case. Even before we win a contract, when we bid on a contract, we got to think through that business case. How much is the government going to spend by bringing us on for 5 years or whatever it might be, and what is the outcome in the future? Are we retiring legacy systems that have been around for 49 years, like we did with the Air Force, abides, their POM and budget formulation system, or other things? So I would say around the kitchen table to my family and relatives, we're trying to save you money. You're trying to take DoD and the federal government, some of the business processes out of the 1990s, get them off Microsoft Excel and into the 21st century and harness this technology.
Now, as you know, government customers can be notoriously fickle.
No.
Is this strategy resonating with your customers? Do they recognize this?
And it is, and you know what? I say no, and a little tongue-in-cheek, because I used to be one of those customers. I spent 24 years, like you, in military, in uniform. 24 years as an Air Force comptroller, financial manager. In fact, I went to my first PDI, probably 1995, I think it was, out in Anaheim, California. So yeah, we would always wish that they would make decisions more, quickly and see the benefits that are there, but they have to work through their processes and their acquisition strategy, et cetera. So we're getting better at that.
So, first of all, thank you very much for your long-standing support of ASMC. We really appreciate it. Talk a little bit about, you mentioned digital mobilization, that recent acquisition, and what that brings to the team there at Definitive Logic.
We had looked at, when we brought on Blue Delta as a partner, they were helping us think through the acquisition process, the M&A process, as we knew we were getting ready to grow from a small business to go compete with the big boys and girls in full and open, and that one of the strategies for doing that was to look at acquisition, find companies out there with like values, with like visions, but bring something that complements you. And they bring that with their way of delivery, their way of looking at solutioning from an organizational standpoint, and road mapping to take an organization from status quo where they are today to their vision in the future. And one of the things that they also brought was a contract vehicle called AFSTS, Air Force Strategic Transformation Solutions. They were one of the 5 primes on this contract vehicle, along with other big 4, Booz Allen, Deloitte, KPMG, and Accenture, and they're holding their own against them. And so now, combining with our forces, we're over 300 and some people now. I think almost 80 projects across both companies. We're really excited about what we do in the future.
So their expertise, as I understand, is in scaling to the enterprise level. Why is scaling so notoriously difficult in government?
Well, it's once you find that maverick that really wants to get after change and get after it today, oftentimes they're not there long enough to see it through. Because as you know, when we were in government and military, we were lucky to get to be someplace for 2 or 3 years. After that, it's on to the next challenge, right? So there's always 1 step forward, 2 steps back sometimes. So to really scale from an enterprise IT or transformational perspective, you really need a champion that's going to be there for the long term and see that through.
And obviously, you see that with what they're bringing to the table with their expertise in scaling. Do you have any success stories yet, or it's probably too early to tell at this point?
They do have some. I think we'll keep those under wraps for now. Yeah. They do. They're transforming today. National Defense University, Air Force OSI, Office of Special Investigations, and several other ongoing contracts. We just won another one. We're excited to help the Army transform, but we don't celebrate wins, we celebrate outcomes. When at the end of the day, we can put a stake in the heart of a dying system that's been around for 30 years and is just sucking the resources from a legacy standpoint. That's when our developers and our program managers get really excited, when we finally have that outcome.
Yeah, that's bringing not only, as you said, value to the customer, but also to the taxpayer.
Absolutely.
It's important to keep that front of mind. So at the end of the day, what's then you look at your strategy, you look at this recent acquisition. What's you're in a very competitive landscape. What is your competitive advantage?
Well, we're all in, right? Yeah. So now that we just crossed over from small business to full and open last fall, it's been about 9 months. We're all in everything. So every contract that we take on, and sometimes we walk away, we don't even bid on things that we don't think make sense to the customer. We've done that actually along with DMI. We looked at there's a federal customer that wanted something that to us it just made no sense. It's really you're wasting taxpayer dollars by doing that. We don't want any part of that. So we no bid that. So we don't bid on things unless we think we can really make a difference. And so we don't have any, dollar goals or anything like that. We don't have any goals to be a 1,000-person organization or a $2 billion. We take every day as it comes. Every day is another chance to produce an outcome and ROI for a customer.
Well, it sounds like a very successful strategy thus far.
It's working. It's a work in progress. There's always room for improvement, right? There's always ways to get everybody on board, everybody rowing the boat in the same direction, and which is always hard with turnover. As you bring on new people leave for other great opportunities, which is around this area. It's a war for talent, right, in the DC area, especially technology. When people have a chance to better themselves and go on to an AWS or Azure or some other big company, and that's great. Maybe they'll come back someday and share their lessons learned, but it's a success all the way around.
Great. We're going to get into some of that momentarily. You're listening to The Business of Defense on Federal News Network. We'll be right back.